We're live on another episode of the Football Palestine Extra podcast where we break down everything that's happened this week in the world of Palestinian football. It's the 23rd of January, so there's just over a week left in the winter transfer window. And of course, as we've done on every episode this month, we have to discuss transfers because that's really what's happening. We're waiting until March for the next national team games to be played. And no sign of the league, unfortunately, returning in Gaza or the West Bank, which the latter being, I think, more of a realistic option. We're left to talk about transfers and rumors and that type of stuff. So on today's episode, we're going to discuss two transfers. Yaser Hamed to Al-Khor in the Qatari second division. Ahmad Al-Qaq just signed yesterday to Sporting Jacksonville in the USL Championship. Those are two major transfers that we'll talk about on today's episode. And then behind the paywall, we will discuss how the Ada refugee camp's pitch was saved and what that means for the upcoming votes in Switzerland to not to suspend Israel from UEFA, but to put pressure on UEFA to threaten their tax exempt status in the country to kind of push them to take action. So look, if you listen to this podcast regularly, consider sharing it with your friends. And if you are a free subscriber and you want to hear the whole thing, including the juicy bits that are behind the paywall, consider upgrading to the paid version. If you like this type of audio content that I put together, we are working on a audio original that will be dropping in the next couple of weeks that will only be available to our paying subscribers. So an incentive to upgrade to a paid subscription. Obviously, if you do so, you're supporting me in doing my work of keeping Palestinian football alive by giving it a platform and by being the only independent journalist covering the national team, Palestinian players abroad, and the local leagues. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to spend the majority of this time discussing Yaser Hamed's transfer to Al-Khor and why I think it's very important. First and foremost, we don't have a lot of defenders in the national team pool. And, probably for the next year, you're going to see the same four names being called up to every single camp. And that would be Michel Termanini, who's a surefire starter, Mohamed Saleh, who was a starter during the Arab Cup, Hamid Mahajna, who plays more as a number 6 with the national team, and Yaser Hamed. The other name you could throw in there is Khalid Abulheja, who is kind of like the long-term solution, being the fact that he's only 20 years old. And Yaser Hamed is really an interesting player, I think, an interesting piece for this national team, because if you kind of look at his career, it hasn't really panned out for him with the national team the way we sort of thought it would when he first joined. You have to keep in mind that he made his debut very, very young. He was, I believe, 21 years old, 21 and a half, just about there in 2019 when he made his debut against Yemen at the West Asian Football Federation Championship. He scored the winning goal in a 1-0 victory against Yemen. And he looked solid. And, he came out of nowhere. Nobody had really heard of him. He was playing, I think, in the 3rd or 4th division in Spain at the time. And, he slotted right in. He had a good WAF championship. 1 month later, he was starting against Uzbekistan and helped keep a clean sheet in that game as Palestine famously beat Uzbekistan to start 2022 World Cup qualifying 2-0 in Jerusalem. Second game of World Cup qualification didn't really go the way Palestine wanted to in that cycle. They lost 2-1 to Singapore, but again, he scored against Singapore. And if you kind of look at how that cycle went, he gave, I think, good performances defensively and also showed a knack for scoring goals. This is a man that has 5 goals to his name with the national team. And, he's closing in on I think 40. He has more than 30 caps with the national team, so he's closing in on some big numbers with the national team as it stands. The fact of the matter is, I think the thing that probably harmed Yaser Hamed the most is the fact that he has never had a stable club situation. Since leaving Spain in 2020, it's basically been one club a year. He went to Bahrain, left Bahrain, went to Egypt, left Al-Masri, went to Qatar with Al-Rayyan, left Al-Rayyan, went to Qadsiya in Kuwait, left them, ended up in India before the Asian Cup in January 2024, left Northeast United in India to go to Zamalek. It's obviously a big move for him. That didn't work out. There was an acrimonious divorce where they had to pay him close to $35,000, I believe, 1.4 million Egyptian pounds. I don't know what that is nowadays, but they had to pay him, although he only, I think they had to pay him the remainder of the contract or something like that, and it amounted to something like 1.4 million Egyptian pounds. And then since then, he's sort of been kicking about in Qatar. He was with Al-Khor, but not playing with Al-Khor. They couldn't get an exemption for him. They wouldn't register him as just a regular foreign player. He played one match for them in the Champions League Elite last season, and that's it. Now, in spite of that, I think, although he lost his starting job with the national team, benched after the at halftime with Palestine trailing Iran 3-1, I thought he did well, especially given the fact that he didn't really have a club. And the thing I think about the most in the third round of World Cup qualifying is the fact that he started against Korea both games, and we earned a draw in each of those games. He came on as a sub at halftime against Iraq, played well there. I think he should have started the game against Kuwait, given how well he played. He came on in place of the injured Ahmad Al-Qaq, and then I believe it was Michel Termanini who picked up a suspension due to card accumulation, and they decided to start Mohamed Salah in the next game alongside Ahmad Al-Qaq in defense. Look, I think in spite of some struggles with the national team, he's done relatively well. Is he at the heights of where we thought he would be, given the trajectory of the early part of his career? Obviously not. And if you don't have a home at club level, I think it's really hard to kind of maintain the momentum. And that's sort of been the story of Yaser Hamed. The fact that, there's a good player in there. He is very comfortable on the ball. You can tell that he's been, developed in a top academy when you see him play, because he is a defender that's very comfortable on the ball. But you do get the feeling that he's the type of player that needs to be playing in order for him to kind of really realize his potential. And I'm really happy that he signed with Al-Khor, because, having spoken to him when he was here in Spain in November with the national team and trying to figure out, what did he want for his career, he said as much. I want to stay in Qatar, and he had confidence that he'd be able to get playing time in Al-Khor, and he was better than the other defenders, and that really might be the case. But I think the fact that he showed the humility and the foresight to say, no, I need to play. Let me drop down a division. Al-Khor is a big club. This is a club that spent 40 years in the Qatari top flight before getting relegated a couple of years ago, and then they did the yo-yo where they spent two seasons down in the second division, got promoted, went back down, and now they're struggling in the second division. They're struggling precisely because they don't have defenders. And I think he made a statement, because just hours after signing with Al-Khor, he started for them in a cup match against Al-Rayyan, who are top of the standings in the cup competition, and obviously first division side, and he led them to a 2-0 victory, kept a clean sheet, went the full 90. So if he can build on that, then I think he can have a renaissance. And I think if anything, this coaching staff has shown that they're open-minded enough to give players second chances, especially if those players are the type of players that have a team mentality, right? And the one thing you can really say about Yaser Hamed, he's not a guy to kind of make a big fuss, even if he's being, slighted or wronged or benched for whatever reason. He's always there for the national team. You smile on his face, happy for his teammates. The team did obviously very well in the Arab Cup, and he was the only outfield player that didn't log a single minute, and he didn't He didn't complain, he didn't whinge, he just got on with it. And so that's the type of guy you want in the national team, whether he plays or not. So the fact that he now has an opportunity to be playing regularly means he can challenge Mohamed Salah for a starting position, because it looks like what the national team coaching staff has in mind is Milad Termanini, who's the surefire starter, and Mohamed Salah, who's the defender with the most form, the most starts. Maybe what might be able to upset that balance is Hamid Mahajna, but I do think Hamid Mahajna is the team's starting number 6 until proven otherwise. And the fact that they have a shortage at that position as well sort of necessitates that, hey, you stick Hamid in midfield, and then you kind of look at the 3 other defenders that I mentioned, who basically are a short term, that's Mohamed Salah, born 1993, a medium term, Yaser Hamed, born December 1997, and a long term, that's Khalid Abdelhajir, born 2005, plan at center back alongside Termanini, who I believe is born in 98, either 97 or 98. He's from that generation. Obviously, he was part of the under 23, the only team that qualified for the under 23 Asian Cup back in 2018. So looking forward to see Yaser Hamed play. Really hope he gets a run of games, and I think if he does, then I think we will be a lot better as a team as a whole. Doesn't mean we solve our problem at center back. I still think is probably the team's weak position, given the fact that whatever combination of players you use, they're not the fastest, right? Like, they all have their individual attributes and they all can be good defenders on their day, but we can still be exposed a little bit at that position because we don't have a fast center back per se. And I still think if you kind of go back in the history, a lot of these players from this generation can make a case of saying, hey, I'm the best ever player at this position in the history of Palestine. The center backs, maybe not so much. Anyway, we've kind of drifted off into a tangent. The other transfer we'll talk about before jumping behind the paywall, Ahmad Al-Qaq to Sporting Jacksonville. Sporting Jacksonville has not debuted at in the league, in the USL Championship. That's the second tier of football in the United States of America. So they'll make their debut in March of this year, basically with a group of players that had never played with each other before this preseason, really. And I think it's a good move for Ahmad Al-Qaq because, this is a guy that we didn't know who he was at this time last year. I said as much when I interviewed him back in December. And he's really had a meteoric rise. He only has 1 season as a professional, 28 appearances across all competitions. And he's sort of built his way up. And towards the end of that USL Championship season last year with North Carolina FC, he started starting games and going the full 90. So this is an opportunity for him to take all the experience that he's gained with the national team at a level that's obviously higher than the USL Championship and translate that into more success. Now he should be way, way, way more comfortable than he was last year in what amounts to a rookie season for him at this level. The sophomore season should see him kick on. So, he got 3 assists last season, and I think it was 10 starts. I think he can do more than that. He can do a lot more than that as far as numbers are concerned. And, the great thing about Ahmed, he does it all. He has good defensive prowess, so he'll track back. And I think, if he can work on the scoring element of his game as well, then you're looking into a player that can really mature into a solid contributor for the national team down the line. So I like that move for him. It's not a flashy move by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes what you need, especially if you're a young player, is just an opportunity to play week in and week out. And I think a lot of people lose sight of that because the way we talk about football is we talk about big clubs and big leagues, and you've got to go to the big club and the big league in order to have a career, and that's not necessarily true. Obviously, if you have that opportunity, take it. The Palestinian player is not going to have a lot of opportunities to go over to one of Europe's big 5 leagues and then get an opportunity to play. That's just not something that happens right now for the Palestinian player. That said, there are many, many different paths to success, and it's not that, oh, if you play in the USL Championship, you're not a good player and you cannot contribute to the national team. I think Ahmed was a surprise in what he showed us, and I think if he continues to mature, he'll get his opportunity at a higher level. But what he needs right now is more minutes. And I think if anything, we know that he sort of fits into the collective very well. And keep in mind, less than a year out from the Asian Cup, we want a good, solid collective. Those 26 players that are going to go to Saudi Arabia next year, they are not going to be the best 26 Palestinian players. They are going to be a lot of the best Palestinian players for sure. But rounding out that group, you want contributors, people who are happy to train and not start. And right now, that's kind of where Ahmed is, right? Pushing maybe to be a starter, but not quite a starter. But again, a guy that is got a good attitude, hard worker, hard trainer, not going to cause any problems. So I really look forward to seeing his development as well over the next year or so. Okay, so let's jump behind the paywall right now. If you've enjoyed listening to this part, go to footballpalestine.com, click on subscribe, and upgrade to a paid subscription. You'll be able to see everything that I'm going to talk about right now as it relates to the more political side of football, the UEFA vote, and the refugee camp, and how the PFA is missing in action and all that. So if you're interested, go to footballpalestine.com, click subscribe, and you'll be able to see the rest of this video, and you'll be supporting independent journalism as well.